In today's show, we're talking Oklahoma City Thunder. Yeah, the Thunder. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I'm the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. You can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon today to get started. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free, and we are available on all platforms. So, it is week 2 of getting entries for the FBI Allo FB Fantasy Basketball World Cup. The first lot of entries have been sent out, while the first lot of emails regarding the entries have been sent out. So if you haven't got one of those, then you haven't made the first cut, which is fine, because we had way more applications than we had positions available. But we've got another one, another different form this week. So it's in the show notes, it's in the descriptions, it's different questions, and we've got another 144 spots to fill this week. So get those entries in. Now, we're going to talk Thunder with Rylan Stiles of the Locked On Thunder podcast. Welcome back to the show, Rylan.
Josh, thanks for having me.
It's good to have you here. It's good to have you here talking Thunder in, it's probably a little bit different circumstances to what it has been in previous seasons. I don't actually recall the way we spoke about the Thunder last season, but I am aware that I spoke at times during the offseason. Like, I don't think they're going to be as bad as you think, and all this tanking stuff is completely overblown, but that's gone now. No one's, well, there might be a couple of people thinking about that, but no one's going, oh man, the Thunder, they're just going to sit everybody and they're just not trying to win games. Nobody thinks that anymore, Rylan.
Yeah, the perception of this team has done a 180 since the last time that we were doing season previews. At one point looked upon as a black eye of the league, and was a team that got a lot of criticism from pretty much everyone nationally, but ultimately they come out of it after a 2-year hiatus from postseason basketball. They make the postseason last year. They have one of the best young cores in the NBA, and it's just a matter of when this young team can put it together in a very tough conference.
Yeah. We think this team's going to be good, but we also think there's a ton of Western Conference teams that are going to improve, and they might get better, but they still might not get out of the play. And I think there's a good chance that they do, but they might not, because things have changed so much. And that brings us to the state of the roster. And we've got all the players that have arrived, the players that have gone. I couldn't actually fit every player that arrived onto this screen, but let's talk about the main guys there. Vasilij Micic finally comes over 8 years later, I think it is. He's now almost turning 30. Kayson Wallace, drafted after the Thunder traded up for that pick, which I actually really liked. I hated it right at the moment, but I did like it about 5 minutes later when I thought about it. Usman Garuba, Keontae Johnson, Victor Oladipo, Taito Washington, Jack White, Davis Bertans is on this team as well. There's just a bunch of guys there, and the only players they lost, Dario Saric goes to the Warriors, Jared Butler goes to the Wizards on a 2-way, and Lindy Waters and Olivier Sarr are currently unsigned. So I would say, Rylan, looking at that comings and goings list, this team, the roster is better. Not even accounting for internal improvement.
Yeah, not even counting for internal improvement or the addition of Chet Holmgren, who didn't get to play last year at all. Of course. So I think this team absolutely got better on paper, and they have, a well-renowned coaching staff and developmental program, and so it's exciting. And you look what Shai's doing in the FIBA World Cup, Josh Giddey in the FIBA World Cup. And they look to be both improved as well. So this team for sure got better. I think what Micic can bring to this team off the bench for a team last year that at times their secondary offense looked a bit disorganized, what he can bring as a kind of stable force for them will be huge for this Thunder team. And then, whatever Kayson Wallace can be as a guy who shot 40% for the majority of the college season last year up until the end of January whenever he dealt with some back injuries. But that's a guy who can really shoot, again, an area of need for this Thunder team. So I think that this team is for sure better.
A couple of things there. We're recording this. It's Tuesday night in the States. It's Wednesday here in Australia, but it's not coming out until next week. But I am going to see Josh Giddey play tonight in the in the Australian warm-up game against Brazil, so I'm excited to go watch that, to go watch Giddey live in person. Secondly, you've probably already got it, but how many like European basketball stands have been jumping into your mentions, Rylan, about Vasilij Micic? Because I've had a few of them when I just dared to suggest that he would be coming off the bench for this team. No way, man. He's a EuroLeague MVP. He's definitely going to be a starter. Have you got that yet?
Yeah, that has been our biggest podcast of the summer, and trending towards our biggest podcast on YouTube ever is the Micic signing. It's been great to see the support for Micic, and I think that I got asked this question too the other day, why fans care a lot about Micic. I think part of it is even local fans caring a lot about Micic is because you've invested so much time in this idea of Micic. This has been the third straight summer of, will he come over? He's teasing the Thunder that he's gonna sign, but he won't ever sign, and then now he finally signed, so people are excited to see what he can become. I will say that, I've heard from people with the Thunder that, he understands his role. He understands that this team has a pretty defined starting best five group with Shai, with Giddey, with Dort, with J-Dub, and Chet. So he understands what his position is on this team, and he's ready to embrace it and ready to start his NBA career. And it could be, and it likely will be, a very long and successful one.
Well, we hope it's long. He's already 30, so he doesn't have a huge amount of time left, but we hope he's able to be a solid option here. But what that does do is him arriving. It does impact the minutes that are available for Wallace, but also for someone like a Trey Mann or even the recently acquired Ty Washington, because withstanding injuries, there's just not a huge amount of playing time for those guards at the moment.
Yeah, the guard logjam is for sure one the Thunder will have to work through. I would expect the Thunder to continue to play 10 to 12 guys a night, which probably was not great for the fantasy aspect of the NBA world, but it was great for OKC to kind of mix and match lineups and eventually have some different things that they could go to. I mean, they had Josh Giddey and Jalen Williams out of Santa Clara. Both of those guys played all five positions last year, and J-Dub and Josh Giddey even played all five in one game down the stretch of that season, as the Thunder didn't have a lot of big men depth and had to rely on some small ball lineups. So that versatility and the mixing and matching of lineups is something that the Thunder are going to rely on again this year. And I think it's going to be exciting to see. I will say that I think Micic will probably have the inside edge to get some minutes off the bench, more stable minutes off the bench, just because of the calming nature of his game and how he can thrive in the pick and roll. And he's a guy that you can just pass the baton to and ensure that your lead will not evaporate the second you take off Josh Giddey and SGA and Jalen Williams and Chet from that floor. So his ability to steady the ship, I think, has been proven at a higher level than the other options for OKC so far.
You brought up a point that I'd forgotten completely, the way that the Thunder ran that fifth starting spot last season, where it's basically every single game it was someone different. It was Kenrich Williams, then it was Jalen Williams, then it was Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, then it was Mike Muscala, then it was back to Jalen Williams, then it was back to Kenrich Williams, and nobody seemed to start. Then Aaron Wiggins would jump in, then no one would seem to start the same in that position, that fifth starter's position for 2 games in a row, until the end of the season when Jalen Williams was able to hold on to that job for a longer period of time. The only real injury coming into the season is Chet Holmgren, and I only say that because he didn't play last season, but he's healthy. We saw him play in all these summer runs. We saw him play in summer league, so he's not actually injured, but we didn't see him play last season. We're going to talk starting lineups in just a second, so I'll get to a couple of discussions around Chet, but what is because there are going to be people, especially in the fantasy community, who are watching Chet and go, no way, I can't trust him. He's going to get hurt every time he steps on the court. So what's the, I don't know if fear is the right word, but what's the general consensus or idea around the Thunder regarding that injury and risk of recurrence?
Yeah, the injury rehab for Chet this year went as good as you can expect. He was always on track. He never had a setback, and he was healthy enough to play in Summer League and for Team USA Select, and he's also been doing pickup runs with Kevin Durant and other superstars as well. So he's been tracking very well, and he looks healthy at this juncture. I think that with Chet Holmgren, it's just a little bit of just the fan-driven narrative of the easy interaction posts on social media. The reality is he didn't get hurt last year because he was too skinny.
No.
And so that had nothing to do with him getting hurt last year. It was a freak injury on a wet, slippery, bad playing surface. And it just happens. And then furthermore, find me the injury that's ever happened to an NBA player in the history of this league that happened because a guy was too skinny. You can find injuries that happen because of the opposite direction, but never because they're just too skinny. So this idea that Joel Embiid's going to put a shoulder into him and he's going to snap him in half like a twig just is not realistic. I think that the that the fear of injury is just the same with kind of every player. I think that from a fantasy perspective and even a Thunder perspective, it's just monitoring how he'll be played. Whenever you see the schedule get released this week, how many back-to-backs are there? How will he play in those back-to-backs? Will he play in those back-to-backs, those 3 games and 4 night stretches? That kind of thing to me. But as far as injury concern goes, I can tell you that he had 0 regression in the rehab process at all. He was always tracking, and we saw him put shots up and work in practices and shoot arounds from the time he was on a scooter. He was getting shots up, so he's amped up to play. The Thunder are excited for him to play, and we'll see if there's any restrictions on back-to-backs. But that's all I'd really worry about with the injuries for Chet.
If there is a restriction on back-to-backs, I would imagine that it lasts for like a month, 6 weeks. It's not going to be, we're running you on the Al Horford, Kawhi Leonard diet where it just happens every time for the entire season. I think it might be, as he returns to action and plays his first NBA game, that through October and maybe November, that he sits 1 or 2 of them and then it's all systems go. Is that how you would read that?
Yeah, I think that the Thunder are going to be smart, but they're also not going to coddle Chet Holmgren. They're going to let him play. And frankly, he's going to be a guy that demands to play. He's a guy that wants to play basketball every chance he can get. And so as long as he's checking all the right boxes medically, you're going to let him play. I think that this is going to be a very fun season for Chet Holmgren. The only thing that we've seen so far to even the only 2 things I guess we've seen so far that even question about his turnovers in Summer League were humongously up. But in Summer League, he didn't play with any point guards like he will play with in OKC. Arguably too many point guards in OKC. And then his shot was off. But I think that the shot was more so, we've seen him shoot at a high clip at every level, from high school to FIBA to college. We've seen him shoot very, very well. I think that that's more so getting more acclimated to playing basketball again. I wouldn't worry about the shot either. And the turnovers, yes, I think they're going to happen for him, but he's not going to be put in that many ball handling scenarios once the regular season tips off, in my opinion.
Yeah, there was something I was going to say there about Chet, and I just completely... Oh, yeah, you were talking about his competitiveness. Like, this is a guy that, don't get fooled by the fact that he looks like not that he looks like he is a skinny white guy. He is an aggressive arsehole. Like, he is going to be in there. He is one of the most competitive players. You might be one of the most competitive players on this roster. He is really, really fired up, and everything that I've heard about him in time I've seen him, he is an ultra competitor. We're going to get into talking about your starting 5 in a second, Rylan. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Football season is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you get bonus bets every time that they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you get bonus bets for every victory. And you can use those bonus bets on spreads, on player props, on over-unders, and more. Now, there is no NFL team in Oklahoma City, Rylan, but I'm assuming that when you put a bet on a Super Bowl winner and you get those bonus bets, you can use them on Oklahoma State college football, I'm guessing. Which one of those schools is your team of choice, or do you have another college team that you're going for there?
Yeah, OU would probably be the school of choice, the Oklahoma Sooners, I'd say.
Oh, well, that's a shame. Anyway, you can go out and put spread bets and player props and over-unders, money lines, and whatever it is you want once you've racked up those bonus bets on FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. Now, your starting 5 is the exact same starting 5 that I think the Thunder are going to roll out there. But surprisingly, I got multiple people pushing back on it when I posted it out on Instagram, because they were like, oh, no way. They can't start Chet Holmgren at the 5. They'll have to start the other Jalen Williams. Chet's not going to survive at the 5. And to me, there is just absolutely no way that this isn't the starting lineup they're going to go with. Yes, Jalen Williams did play well last season, the king of drawing charges. But there is no way in my mind that they are benching Lou Dort or the other Jalen Williams, or they're not benching the other guys, so that tall Jalen Williams, or as I call him, Pig Williams, can start next to Chet. That's just not going to happen.
It's not. And I think that is just the fans that maybe don't have the same grasp of Oklahoma City. I think they've got a great read on it. The Thunder internally have 2 strong beliefs. Number 1 is their belief in Lou Dort. They absolutely love Lou Dort, from the coaching staff to the front office. So they're going to give him an extremely long leash, whereas some observers of the Thunder, even within the Thunder fan base, would rather them not give him that long leash. The Thunder are going to do that, and his defense and what he brings to the team as a leader of the team kind of warrant that. And then the Thunder also believe Chet Holmgren is a center. Now, they could be wrong on that belief, but they believe he's a center, and they've been saying that since the day that they drafted him, and that has not changed with this injury. Because again, this injury had nothing to do with him being a center or him being skinny or anything else. So they are going to play him at the center position. That's why they didn't take a big man this year. It's why they didn't improve their big man rotation this offseason. They believe they have their center of the future. And they believe that Chet Holmgren is the type of center that you need to let SGA and Josh Giddey thrive, because those two guys are best getting downhill. The only weapon that Josh Giddey has had offensively scoring the basketball was later on in this last season, where he started to take advantage of smaller matchups and take them to the rim and just score over them. SGA, we know the pressure he puts on the rim to get foul calls and also to finish there, and eventually racked up a 31-point per game season while not shooting the ball particularly well from three or very often from three. And so Chet Holmgren is a center that allows you to clear the lane and allow that to continue to progress and flourish while drawing some respect from the defense on the perimeter. So he fits what they want to do, and he fits this style of basketball that they want to play. And so as of right now, the Thunder view him as a center and will continue to, at least for the entirety of this year, because they're not in any hurry to make predictions. They want to see for themselves what the data says. And right now, it's all pointing to Chet being the center. So I think that this will be the starting five as long as all five guys are healthy.
Yeah, I don't really see any way that's not going to be the case, honestly. It's just not going to be. You talk about Lou Dort, who I also refer to as Midwest Dylan Brooks. Is there going to be a situation that when someone like Cason Wallace is ready, like, I know you say they love him and his defense is good, but he takes so much off the table offensively. Like, he is one of the worst finishers in the NBA. And I just think that maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I would doubt that the plan is for Jalen Williams to be the long-term starting power forward. I would guess they would want Giddey, Shai, and Jalen to play the 1, 2, and the 3, and then they would want somebody else to be playing there next to Chet. Or do they just think Jalen can just be a full-time 4?
Yeah, they certainly do not limit Jalen's potential to play any position, even putting him at backup point guard last year at some points and everything. But ultimately, when you look at Lou Dort, this is a make-or-break year for him offensively. There's a role for him offensively, I believe. Since his rookie season, he's never shot below 40% on corner threes. That's going to have to be his role, where he just sits there, is the beneficiary of driving kicks, hits corner threes, and then gets stronger attacking the rim. His frame suggests he should be a good rim finisher. He's not, and never has been a good rim finisher. It's partly him being indecisive, partly him not just using that frame to go power over oppositions down low. He's got to be able to do that more this year through contact. And so this is a make or break year for him to show he can actually improve upon that, because the reality of the situation is eventually the Thunder are going to make a move to improve this roster in a fairly big way. And it might not be the superstar Joel Embiid type of move that people want them to make, but it'll at least be a move to put a bow on this core. And the only real expendable piece that is somewhat of a sweetener to a pick package with a matching salary to go get someone big, even if it's just like a very, very, very good rotational player, would be Lou Dort. Because you've seen throughout this time where the Thunder have tried to move up from pick 6 in the draft. They've tried to move up in the draft higher than, the 2 spots they moved up this year. You can't just overwhelm teams with picks only. You have to have those sweeteners. And if Cason Wallace can be the defender that the Thunder think he can be, then that makes Lou Dort a bit expendable down the line. But as of right now, they are still all in on Lou Dort. Yeah,
we'll see how long it lasts. I'm very interested to see what happens with the Dort, not experiment, but how that all goes with all this other talent that will be coming through eventually. Now, the rest of your rotation, you did say they might play 12 guys. They won't play 12 guys necessarily every night, but they'll bring guys in and out. This was the top 10 that you gave me, and then I'll talk about the other names in a second. So you got the other Jalen Williams, Micic, Kenrich Williams, Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins. The other 2 guys you talked about there were Usman Jiang and Alexei Pokusevski. Now, if I was to look at 10 guys, I would probably have Jiang there over Aaron Wiggins, but Wiggins has proven it. I guess the thing with Wiggins is that he couldn't really even nail down a regular every night role last season, and I think Jiang has taken some big steps forward as we head into this season. But this is the depth of this team, that you don't have Pokusevski on that list, you don't have Jiang on that list, you don't have 10th overall pick Cason Wallace on that list, you don't have Trey Mann on that list. There's a number of guys who aren't there that they can give those minutes to. And also, one guy I do want to quickly touch on here is Isaiah Joe, because people will look at this roster, and we're going to ask this question later, and they'll be like, well, he's got a non-guaranteed deal, so he's probably going to get cut, and I can't wait. My team's going to grab him. Surely there is no chance that Isaiah Joe's getting cut.
Yeah, the Thunder roster is kind of overblown with this idea that there's a lot of talent. We can go through the cuts in a minute. Every player the Thunder are going to cut was given away multiple times this offseason for free. The Thunder were paid to take on these players, and they're going to get rid of them to clear the way. So it's not, I don't get the idea that the Thunder are going to be giving up players who teams are ready to jump on, because teams could have already jumped on them if they wanted to. This summer, they could have already jumped on them if they wanted to, but it certainly will not be Isaiah Joe, who provides some of the best shooting in the NBA, but much less for this Thunder team that lacks shooting still, even with some improvements in that area this offseason. So Isaiah Joe, and he sneakily is a better defender than what he looks like on the court whenever he plays as well. So Isaiah Joe is a key cog to this rotation. And you're right, the depth of this team is on full display, and it's part of why I'm fairly excited for what this full regular season can look like, because whenever you talk about these names, and you talk about the coach who's willing to shuffle through the Rolodex of players. This is a head coach that's not going to be stubborn. If a guy doesn't have it that night, he's going to get him out of there. He's even benched Josh Giddey at times, and benched Lou Dort, and benched guys who are like the main guys on this roster. So you're telling me that in an 82-game season, there's going to be a lot of games where you can't just find 8 or 9 guys that night that have it on a list of 12, 13 names that you really like. I think that more often than not, the Thunder will find a combination of 6, 7, 8, 9 guys who can really play on any given night and have it going, and are able to win some more regular season games than people think. And it might not translate to the postseason, but as far as the regular season goes, it can get them a lot of wins. So I think that ultimately I would agree with you that if you're just talking about minutes in the long run, Poku and Jang will both probably be ahead of Wiggins. If you're talking about trying to maximize your rotation to win a basketball game, I'd have Wiggins above those two. So it's just kind of up to what the Thunder's mindset is going into this year. And I think it'll likely trend more still toward development, which is going to be shocking to hear for some national people who want the Thunder to just go for it right now.
I'm not going to talk a huge amount about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander because he had that big breakout step last season. We saw that. Part of the concern, I wasn't even concerned that I have for him, but like I have a level of skepticism is not even the right word. It makes me think like I don't believe in Shai, because I very clearly do. But the way that he was able to take his free throw shooting and free throw drawing to this next level last season makes me feel that even a slight regression hurts his overall fantasy value. I've said this on the show many times. He took his free throw percentage up 10 percentage points from 81 up to 90.5. Like, that's gigantic. He took his free throw attempts from 7.2 to 10.9. He took his overall field goal shooting from 45 up to 51%. I say all those things to ask the question, like, what is the next step? How does he improve from there? Because there are things there where I look at and go, oh, that free throw shooting might be 87, which in the scheme of real NBA basketball doesn't mean much, but for fantasy it does. Or he's 51%, he might be 49.2 or something like that, which is a drop back as well. So to offset those things which were gigantic leaps forward, what is something that he might be able to step forward in or improve this season?
Yeah, his free throw shooting was so interesting to me because I think that a lot of his misses were on technical foul free throws, which was just odd. The Thunder as a team could not capitalize on technical foul free throws. Isaiah Joe missed a ton. SGA missed a ton. They just could not hit their technical fouls. But overall, the stroke looks pure from SGA at the free throw line in game and also in practices and shoot around and everything else. But an area of his game that I think he can take a massive leap in is his three-point shooting. I think that the three-point shooting is something that he's going to harp on. He's so far has came back every summer of his career with a humongous improvement in some category, if not multiple categories. And this is a guy who has shot 41% from three before. Now, that was in the 2021 season with only 35 game sample size, and the sight lines, as we know, were very shooter friendly in that season. But he shot 36% as a rookie in all 82 games, but in that season he only averaged under 2 threes per game. The thing is, though, whenever you watch him play in FIBA for Team Canada, something to watch for as the tournament ramps up here in these exhibitions has been the overall change to his shooting form. It's much more fluid, and he's also very comfortable trying those step backs again, which he got a bit away from last year, which led to some better efficiency because he didn't try as many of those step backs. He just got to the bucket and either scored at the rim through contact or pulled back on a little mid-range jumper that is hard to contest, because if you're looking at Shai, you would think that the way to defend him is to give him space and to prevent him to shoot at the rim, but he can easily just pop a mid-range jumper and do that at a high clip as well. So overall, the biggest area of growth from him would be three-point shooting, and I think that he can probably do that, especially playing off ball more this year, at least in some more capacity off ball with Josh Giddey and Chet Holmgren to get some open three-point looks, an area that he didn't really get the chance to shoot a lot of last year.
He barely took any. Look, he cut his three-point attempt. And this is how he was able to bump his field goal percentage up. For those of you who are looking at that in fantasy, he went from 5.3 attempts from three to 2.5. And we'll know that three-point shooting percentages are lower than two-point percentages. So if you take fewer threes, your overall field goal percentage goes up. So even if he does shoot 37% from three this season, but he gets more confident in it and takes those step backs and goes back to taking 5 threes a game, well, his overall field goal percentage will drop. Yes, his true shooting might rise, his effective field goal percentage might go up, but unfortunately, standard fantasy categories don't count that, and his field goal percentage might go back to being a 49% guy, even though overall he's more efficient and he is hitting more of those threes. So part of that reason he was able to jump that field goal percentage up as high as he did is he stopped taking the threes, which for him aren't a particularly high percentage shot, and they're not, his points per possession don't change, doesn't improve that much by him taking all those threes. But if that does change, that will have an impact on it. Let's look at the players on this team under the age of 23, because there's a ton of them. There's Jalen Williams, who's 22. There's Jalen Williams, who's 21. There's Giddey, who is somehow only 20, which is, honestly, whenever I look at these ages, it's the most amazing one that I was looking at. Man, he is only 20. He's younger than Chet Holmgren. He's younger than Jalen Williams. Usman Jeng is 20. There is Holmgren 21. Poku's 21. Kaysen Wallace is 19. Usman Garuba's 21. Trey Mann's 22. Robinson Earl is 22. And Ty Washington is 21. There's a lot of names on there. I want to talk Josh Giddey because we thought there might be, how's he gonna coexist with Shai long term? How's the shooting gonna go? But I thought he took gigantic steps forward last season. His passing is absolutely elite. I thought his defense is not great, but it is improved. And I think the shooting might get there, Rylan. So we're talking Giddey here. He is unbelievably almost the youngest player on this team. It's only Kaysen and Jeng who are younger than him. He's established as a 2-year NBA starter who plays 30 minutes a night. I think he took the second most amount of shots per 100 possessions on this team behind Shai. Yeah, he did. What's next for him? Like, is it just improving that three ball as well? Like, where is he fitting on this squad long term?
The next step for Josh Giddey is actually not the 3-point ball, because I think that's going to progress at a slower pace and at a rate where he progressed last year. Like if he can make that kind of jump every single year under Chip England, that'd be fantastic. But like eventually that'll come around. I think that he can be a league average 3-point shooter just because of his work ethic and this, like how hard he works and the background of him to improve his game. The improvement's going to come with his free throw rate, which is what we talked about with Shai earlier. His free throw rate was horrendous in his NBA career so far for a guy of his stature and frame, and a guy that, like I said earlier, thrives only getting at the rim against smaller matchups. This is something that Mark has talked about a lot, that the emphasis for Josh Giddey this summer is to get to the free throw line, figure out a way to make them blow the whistle, force their hand to get you to the free throw line, because it's not as though you're not getting fouled. It's just they're not calling it. So how can you make them give you that contact? And so far in one FIBA exhibition game, he shot 5 free throws, which is he only did that in the NBA more than 4 free throws around 5 times in his whole NBA career. So like it is something that he is going to need to improve on, and that can open things up for him, because as you saw so far for Team Australia, with the way he can score at the rim, given his almost 6'9" frame, he stands by the fact he's 6'9". The Thunder call him 6'8" still. With that frame, and if he can score at the rim at a high level, as defenses rotate over to him, he has that elite playmaking to make them pay for it and find the open man. So that's going to be the next evolution, is being a force of rim pressure in the offensive game. And
one thing that is really interesting to track with that is his free throw rate. It was 13%, or 0.13. So every 13% of his field goal attempts were free throws, or whatever, how we want to look at that number. But it went up as the season went on, and over his final 10 games, it was up to 18. Over his final 25 games, it was 17. So it is pushing up, and you get that to 20, 21. He had a 26 free throw attempt rate playing in Adelaide for the 36ers down here in the NBL. So there is a possibility of that jumping up, and that's one of those things that takes guys from being good to being very good to being stars. And we were talked about that with Shai. If you get that free throw attempt rate up, and then so much other stuff. Of course, he's got to hit his free throws, because that percentage dropped down to like 66% over the last 25 games. So they've got to go in as well. But getting to the line is important. Now, there are a ton of young guys there. I can't talk about all of them in this show, but what I do want to talk about now, Rylan, is, okay, who is getting cut? Because there are 25 players currently on this roster, and only one of those players is signed to a 2-way deal. So that means that there are 5 players who will not, at this point, make the regular season roster. Who are they? And I want to see if they match up with my 5.
For me, it's going to be Victor Oladipo,
correct,
Jack White, Ty Washington, Usman Garuba, and then I have Jeremiah Robinson-Earl as my last one.
Interesting. Okay, so we got 4 or 5 there, and the only one that we had differed is I had Davis Bertans getting cut and them keeping Usman Garuba. I believe Oladipo, Robinson-Earl, Washington, and White. I think they're all going to get cut, but I had Bertans getting cut over Garuba. So, what makes you think that Usman is going to get cut there?
Yeah, I think that whenever you look at Davis Bertans, he has that contract where if you only play him in 75% or less of the games, you can waive him next summer for $5 million. And the Thunder have managed to play with a older big man throughout this time, under Mark of having Mike Muscala, and then from Muscala you go into Dario Saric, and now a likely lineage there would be Davis Bertans. The problem would be Davis Bertans not necessarily as willing, it doesn't feel like, from his other stops to be in that Muscala and Saric role where you're kind of getting DNPs on weeks at a time, and then you get back in the rotation, then you fall back out of it. It doesn't seem like that's his cup of tea necessarily. So if the two could work out a buyout agreement, I think that would be a tremendous win for OKC to get him cut. But as of right now, I look at the $1.9 million owed to Jerry and then the low contract owed to Usman Garuba and kind of side there. But I will say, I would prefer your list of cuts. I think that putting Usman Garuba with this organization, given his defensive tools, the Thunder have a brilliant G League organization led by Cam Woods, who's one of the best defensive coaches in the G League. So getting him some time there stashed away to grow and develop his defensive game, along with giving the Thunder another look. The Thunder getting another guy who isn't on their normal roster to shuffle in, where they don't have a guy who plays and looks like Usman Garuba. No. They don't have a big man who does that. So when you give them the opportunity to throw another lineup at you, that's just going to make life harder on the opposition to game plan, because he might get a DNP. He might play 20 minutes and just be a totally different lineup than what you're expecting and a different play style than you're expecting. So I would much prefer your list, but I think that Bertans' contract might make it so he sticks around. But hopefully Garuba does stick around.
Because, Bertans is $17 million for this season, as you said, and a guarantee for next year. So it is a lot of money to eat, and we'll see what they end up doing. I think in terms of, the financials have to play a part in it, because if it wasn't financial related, I don't think there's any chance that Bertans would be prioritized there ahead of Garuba. And people will be shocked, I think, to think that Jeremiah Robinson-Earl would be cut. But to me, he is very reminiscent of Eric Paschall, who played for the Warriors a couple of years ago, who played some decent minutes on teams that were struggling to find bodies, and that's what Robinson-Earl did. He's had a lot of injuries, and now there's just multitudes of players who are probably in better positions than where he is, and it just makes the most sense that when you are at this roster squeeze, maybe they try and find a trade for him or whatever, that he's not necessarily going to be the big priority there, as we've discussed. Okay, there's a lot of options on this team. Who is a breakout candidate?
A breakout candidate on this team, I think, can be Josh Giddey. I think that he can take a big leap in the box score, both assist-wise. You look at how he can just dump passes off to Chet Holmgren, both in the pick and roll, as Chet Holmgren's trailing in transition, just the diving to the rim. Everything he can do with Chet Holmgren, I think, can boost his assists even more. We know he's going to collect a ton of rebounds, and he's gotten better as the months went on last year at scoring the basketball and getting to the rim there to allow himself to score, plus any sort of improvement from beyond the arc itches him closer and closer to that league average mark. So I would be really in on a Josh Giddey breakout, especially if he's slipping in fantasy rounds at all. So I would go with him as my breakout candidate.
What about on the flip side, a regression candidate? It's really hard to see that given how young this team is. And as much as I hate saying it, to me, it probably is like, what if Shai just takes more threes and the field goals drop and then the free throws are at 88 or 87 instead of 91, and with it being 81 every year of his career. And that's not to say that he's bad, but to me, when you look at everyone else, I don't see anyone else who's really in line to have gigantic drop-offs in their production.
Yeah, a regression candidate, I guess, would be either, like you said, Shai, because if he has any drop-off, it would be a regression in the fantasy basketball world. Mm-hmm. And then, J. Will could regress just in basketball sense of a guy who went from at the end of the year getting bulk minutes and a pretty stable role to now, what if you play small one night and he doesn't get a minute in the game because you're playing Kendrick at the 5 whenever you take Chet off the floor. That's true. So you go small and he's not in there. And he shot 40% from 3 last year. I mean, he was not a 3-point shooter in college. He comes in and shoots 40% from 3 in the NBA on 2 attempts a game. That has the likelihood to regress even at least a little bit from beyond the arc this year. And so when you're getting less minutes and you regress even a little bit statistically, I would consider that a regression candidate for Jay Will, even though he's still going to give the Thunder some valuable minutes.
Who's the most likely player to be traded?
The most likely player to be traded on this roster, maybe if you see a team get injured and need someone like Davis Bertans, maybe he could be an option for another team. I will say Pokusevski. This is a Thunder team that the Thunder have not, under Sam Presti, let a ton of guys hit restricted free agency. There seems to be no contract extension on the horizon for Poku ahead of this season, so he will be playing this year on an expiring deal that will send him into restricted free agency. You saw that with Darius Bazley last year, where they let him play it out until the deadline, then shipped him off to Phoenix. But the Thunder do like Poku a lot, so maybe he will be an exception to that rule. And ultimately, I would settle on Trey Mann. I think the Trey Mann showed a lot in Summer League, and there's going to be a guard needy team out there that wants to take a shot on him, because at the end of the day, you can probably pick him up for a second-round pick or something like that, to where you can have the potential to have a guy lead your team and just see if he pops or not in your organization, especially a guard needy team that might not necessarily want to win a ton of games this year.
All right, let's get to the business of win projections. This team 40-42, where I didn't go back and have a look, but I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have selected them for 40-42, even though we were a little bit higher on this Thunder team than people were in general. But they were 40-42. They had the 15th best net rating in the NBA, plus 0.6, which is really good. And now FanDuel's gone, all right, let's go. We're at 44.5 wins as our over-under, and we are remarkably similar, but also both under. You're at 44-38. I'm at 43-39. And I think if this was the same Western Conference as last season, Rylan, I'd be looking at the Thunder as a 46-win team, I reckon. But it's not. And for every win that every other team gets, somebody has to lose at some point. So I'm expecting the Thunder to improve and get a few wins. And I think their team's going to be significantly better. I wouldn't be shocked if they ended up at 42-42 and still in the play-in, because other teams have gotten significantly better.
Yeah, I think that this Thunder team, they're going to look a lot better on the court. Now, their record might not be this incredible, dramatic improvement, but on the court, if you watched them last year and then you watch them this year, you're going to know who the better team was and who the better team is. But it is a tough Western Conference. I will say that I consider them, like you, a pretty significant lock for postseason basketball, just because controlling the Rockets pick, controlling the Clippers pick, controlling other picks, they have zero incentive at the end of a season in a tight play-in race to shut it down. They didn't do it last year. The Dallas Mavericks did. They take that spot. I think that you're going to see that every year, where like there's going to be a team who had higher hopes, but eventually just shuts it down in the last 2 weeks, and the Thunder will take advantage of that at the very least. But this team, I think, has a wide win variance. You could see them get really hot in the regular season, as we mentioned the depth before. Like, first and foremost, this is still a very young team that's going to take the regular season seriously. You saw the SGA Instagram post after every single win. Winning in the NBA still matters to this young team. They still just get giddy about it every time that they win a basketball game. And so, like, the Thunder are going to care. And you cannot guarantee that all other 29 teams are going to care every single night the way you can with the Thunder. They're not going to be load managing a ton of guys, if anyone at all, as we mentioned with Chet Holmgren, maybe for a month or two, and then he's going to go be all systems go as long as he's healthy. And so then those two equations, plus, like we talked about, the depth of, you're going to be able to find 8 guys a night who are playing good basketball. Like the odds of playing 14 guys, 12 guys on this roster in one game, and most of them sucking, are not very high. And so that's going to benefit you a lot too for this Thunder team, who we saw made a lot of adjustments last year as one of the best third quarter teams in the NBA. And we also saw every year with Mark, even whenever this team had zero talent on it, they've been a top half of the league defense. This year, defensively, they could be top 10, could arguably top 5, but top 10 for sure, in my opinion, leaping up 2 spots from where they were last year. So the defense and everything makes their win variance very high, but realistically, it is very hard to pick up a lot of games in the NBA year to year. The Thunder did it last year in a big way. This year, a 4-game improvement is still a pretty good jump for an NBA team. So I know that people want to jump the gun on how good the Thunder can be, and they can reach that plateau this year. But ultimately, if you're going to make a prediction, you've got to be somewhat realistic, and 4 wins is still really impressive.
It is. And now it's time to see how impressive you are, because we're going to play the gritty, Ryan. We're looking at Oklahoma City Thunder players. You've played these basketball grid games before, I'm assuming?
Correct.
All right, so here we go. It's Thunder only. So we're doing Thunder Pacers, Thunder Nuggets, Thunder Wizards, Thunder Suns, and Thunder Rockets. And the last one is a Thunder player averaged 8 rebounds per game. Now, they're a little bit different here because we don't do rarity scores because it's only you and no one else is competing against you, but you are competing against all of the other hosts in different ways. So what we want to do is I take all of the games played by each player for both franchises. So they might have played 200 for the Thunder and 3 for the Pacers, or 5 for the Thunder and 100 for the Nuggets. And then I take the smaller of those two numbers and I rank them all, and they get a score of 100 being the most games and 0 being the fewest games. And you want to head towards the 0. You want to try and get that low player who played one random appearance for the Thunder and played a million games for the Pacers, and you get scored that way. And the last one for the 8 rebounds per game, they have to have averaged 8 rebounds per game in a season playing for the Thunder, and then we scale those based on the fewest career games played for the Thunder. There's no qualifying amount of games played in a season needed for them to get that. If they came across and played 20 games and averaged 8 rebounds, it counts as well. And we're looking for fewest games played as a member of the Thunder / Seattle Sonics franchise. So it goes all the way back to the Sonics history here as well. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with Thunder, Rockets, and go DJ Augustine.
Thunder, Rockets, DJ Augustine. Okay. DJ Augustine playing, well, okay, interesting. He played more games for both of those franchises than I expected. It's not a huge amount of games, but there were quite a lot of randoms in this category, which I'm going to go through who they are in a second. But DJ Augustine played 54 for the Rockets and 62 for the Thunder. That's a 24.2 score on that one. The highest score was James Harden, obviously, because he played 220 for Oklahoma City. Some low score options. Rick Brunson played 4 games for the Thunder / Sonics. Who else is on here that's an interesting name? Justin Patton. Wow. Do you remember his 5 games for the Thunder?
Justin Patton, a rebuild legend.
Yeah, I do not remember him playing for the Thunder at all.
It netted Isaiah Roby.
Oh, did it? Oh, yeah, okay. Interesting. Yeah. The other one is, of course, Rockets legend Carmelo Anthony, who played 10 games for Houston. That would have been a pretty good score.
One.
All right, what else are we going for now?
Thunder, 8 rebounds per game, Moses Brown.
Oh, yeah, you've nailed this here. You've nailed the assignment. Now, is he the lowest one? He is not the lowest one, but he is very, very close to it. I wonder if you can guess who the lowest one is, and I'll give you the Moses Brown one because he played 43 Thunder games, which is a score of 1.92. The guy who had the lowest score was actually in the same era, in those weird rebuild tank, February, March, April specials, who averaged 8 rebounds per game in his very, very small Thunder career.
Oh, goodness. Was it?
I'm pretty sure he had close. I think he had close to a 20 rebound game as well during that, maybe even 2 of them.
Close to a 20 rebound game.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I'm gonna double check that. I'm pretty sure he did.
Oh goodness, I don't think Isaiah Roby ever got close to a 20 rebound game at 6'9". Oh goodness, Gabriel Deck never got close to a 20 rebound game.
No, he did not.
Obviously. I'm gonna go Tony Bradley.
Maybe I'm wrong on this. No, it wasn't Tony Bradley. Let me have a quick. Where is these numbers? No, where am I getting this 20 rebound game? No, I think anyway. It was Jalen Horde.
Moses Brown had a 20 rebound game. Jalen Horde did have almost a 20 rebound game. He actually did have a 20 rebound game. You're right.
He did. He had that.
Jalen Horde.
Yes, Jalen Horde. He played 23 Thunder games, and he had that random stretch. I can't remember which year it was. But Moses Brown's a great answer. What are we going to do next?
Let's do Thunder, Wizards.
Thunder and Wizards. All right.
Ish Smith.
Yeah, we love Ish Smith in these games. He's always good value. Ish Smith. Wow, Ish Smith only played 30 games for the Thunder. Okay. That's a good score, but there were some other good ones. 18.18 is the score for Ish. The highest scoring player between those two franchises was somebody by the name of Gus Williams, who played a lot for Seattle. Some low score ones. Justin Robinson. Okay, I remember him. From a couple of years ago. Greg Ballard. Don't know who. Oh, yes, I do know. I know him. I think he was a Seattle guy. Rashard Lewis was on that list, although he played quite a bit. Mike Wilkes. Don't know who that is. Anyway, let's go on to the next one. What are you going to do? Pacers, Nuggets, or Suns?
Let's do Suns and do Darius Bazley because he didn't hardly play at all with the Suns.
Yeah, he didn't. I'm going to have a look how many he actually played because he barely got on the court after that trade. Darius Bazley played 7 games for Phoenix. He played 221 for the Thunder. That is a 1.58. Rylan, you are really, really flying here at the moment. The Pacers and the Nuggets are the last two.
The Pacers, the one I'm thinking, I'm trying to balance with the Pacers because he played a ton with the Pacers, but he didn't play all that much with the Thunder. So I'm trying to see if that would be a good enough score. But actually, no, they have to play regular season games, huh?
It's going to be regular season games.
Because TJ Leaf did not get into the regular season for the Thunder.
Wow. No,
I was going to say he was in training camp. He was one of these guys like Ty Washington people are freaking out about.
That's right.
That's the freak out with Ty Washington is like when people thought TJ Leaf was going to be good for the Thunder and then he just got cut and it didn't matter at all. For the sake of time, I'll just stick with George Hill, the Pacers.
Wow, the Thunder do have a very large selection of these random guys who play a handful of games, and George Hill is one of them. That is 2.92 his score. He played 14 games for the Thunder. Wow, that's his. Who was the highest? Derek McKee was the highest back from the Sonics days, but George is almost the best one. There's a bloke by the name of Eddie Gill who played one game for the franchise at some point. I don't know when that happened. I'm trying to find any other new ones. Victor Oladipo only played 67 games in his Thunder career, so he was there. Now he's back again, obviously. Yeah, but really good scores. All right, last one. Denver.
Last one. Let's go with the NBA champion, Reggie Jackson.
Wow. You are absolutely locked in here. Reggie Jackson played 16 games for the Denver Nuggets. That gets you a score of 6.17. I haven't totaled them all up yet, but I reckon that's going to put you very, very close to in the lead, if not almost definitely in the lead amongst all the hosts. The highest player there was Dale Ellis, who played just tons of games for both franchises. Some other interesting low guys. Let's have a look. Someone by the name of George Zidek. Don't know who that is. Elmore Spencer. Nate Robinson in his 4 games for the Thunder. There you go.
Oh, that would have been a good one.
Wow. Or how PJ Dozier's 2 games for the Thunder as well would have also got you a pretty good score. But Rylan,
the best 35 in Thunder history, some would say.
Some would say. Some would be wrong, but some would say that. And that would bring us to the end of the show, Rylan. Thank you for coming on, chatting Thunder with me. Tell us what's going on over at Locked On Thunder at the moment.
Locked On Thunder is just getting ready for a very exciting season with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And Josh, I want to give you one question that I had from a listener that I didn't know how to answer.
Okay.
So you can end the show flexing your muscles for me.
All right.
What is more valuable in fantasy basketball? The potential ceiling of Chet Holmgren or the potential ceiling of Jalen Williams out of Santa Clara?
The potential ceiling of Chet Holmgren, I say without really... I know I hesitated slightly. I don't think there's too much hesitation in that. Jalen Williams was really... We didn't even spend a huge amount of time on Jalen Williams here because there's just so many interesting things on this team. But Williams was really good last season. I think he can be a really impactful player. I'm not sure about the league-leading steals numbers that he put up at the end of last season, whether that's going to be necessarily something that 100% continues. But Chet's a guy that could very easily be 18, 12, 2.5 blocks a game, shoot threes, and pass as well. Like that is insanely valuable to me. So to me, it's pretty clearly Chet.
Yeah, the blocks per game is going to be huge for Chet, I think, for right out of the gate. So great job there, Josh. You kill it with fantasy coverage. And hopefully you all will tune into Locked On Thunder for a very exciting young team in OKC.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting year for the Thunder and so many interesting prospects there, Rylan. Thank you again for coming on and chatting about the Thunder with me.
Thanks for having me.
And that'll do it for me today. Don't forget, follow this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app and on YouTube. Thumb it up and leave your comments down below. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.